Sippers, sippets, welcome back to another show. This is your host, Mercy. This is Pour Your Own Problem. Close to the end of last year, when Nick Shirley unfolded fraud in Minnesota, this fraud epidemic that was undercover for so long has now reared its head and has exploded across this nation. We can find fraud any and everywhere. And I'm glad that more people are looking into it and investigating it, especially the federal government. Not only was our government bloated, but our government continues to just pour money into projects, into people that are not doing right with the funds. And so us taxpayers suffer. We're going to review a few videos of fraudsters that have been busted and fraudsters that are on the run and some that have been caught. We got to get to the bottom of this. We got to keep shaking the tree because at the end of the day, it's my money, it's your money. And I think the more and more we highlight these things, the more and more we can discover and get to the bottom of this corruption that has been taking place with our tax dollars. As y'all may know, sipper, sippets, whatever in your cup. Remember, pour your own problems. I can't do it for you. Let's start the show.
Hey, boss, he ain't working.
Just 2 weeks after launching its most wanted fraudsters list, the FBI already reports taking at least 3 fugitives into custody, including 2 captured overseas.
And one arrest was announced yesterday involving a suspect found in Turkey, another fugitive captured in the Philippines after pleading guilty in a separate Medicare fraud scam, and then failing to return to the U.S. for sentencing. Newsmax correspondent Jason Matera has all the details for us. Jason.
Yeah, Mark, Charlotte, these weren't some small-time scams either. Let's start with the guy who was found in the Philippines since his guilt isn't in doubt. Herbert Kimball admitted to helping run a scheme that bilked Medicare of at least $1.2 billion in fraudulent charges over a 5-year period. Federal authorities say the operation began in 2014 with Kimball's Philippines-based call center, pumping out dubious orders for medical equipment, mainly for orthopedic braces. Each order came with patient information, a prescription, and the equipment that was supposed to be shipped. Officials say the telemedicine doctors used to sign off on these orthopedic braces often had no real relationship with the Medicare patients. There wasn't a physical examination, for instance. And in some cases, these doctors didn't even speak to the patient before approving the brace. Prosecutors say those patient orders were then sold to medical equipment companies, and those companies would turn around and bill Medicare for that equipment. Kimball pleaded guilty back in April of 2019 to his role in the scam, admitting to charges that included conspiracy to commit wire fraud and conspiracy to defraud the United States. His sentencing was scheduled for August of 2024, but instead of showing up for court, Kimball remained on the run in the Philippines. And that's where the FBI says he was finally captured 7 years after that guilty plea. Yet Kimball wasn't the only fraud fugitive the FBI says they nabbed recently. Just yesterday, Kash Patel announced the arrest of Ibrahim Hilmi, who authorities say is tied to an even larger Medicare scheme, this one totaling $3.7 billion. Hilmi had allegedly been on the run for a year, hiding out in Turkey until he was apprehended. The FBI's fraud most wanted list has only been live for 2 weeks, and already the Bureau says at least 3 fugitives are in custody, accused of ripping off American taxpayers through Medicare fraud or theft during the COVID-era payouts. And Mark, Charlotte, the administration is promising that more takedowns are on the way.
And you can see and understand that this is it's an ongoing theme. I've did several of these videos on fraud, and the overwhelming theme is Medicaid and Medicare. And what they're basically doing, for people that don't know and just catching up to this show or catching up on the fraud, they will use real people's identity for as their Medicaid cards. Because think about it. You can give somebody your Medicaid information. All they got to have is your name, your age, and stuff like that. You give them your Medicaid information, right? Say you someone that's a junkie. You give them that, they're gonna act like they treat you, quote unquote, because you're not getting nothing. You probably don't even know this is going on. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna bill the federal government. So get that back pay, right? This is what the ongoing theme is. And with so many of these situations, a lot of people, like when it come down to hospice, the fraud running rapid in California, anybody can make a hospice business, right? Anybody. And so all they need is your information. Build the federal government and just rack up. Like I said earlier, our government continues to just pour into things that don't make sense. And then you don't have no checks and balances when it come down to certain states, or people overlook, or they're in on it, and money is just wasted. Our tax dollars are just wasted and going into people's pockets that it should never even reach. But let's keep it going.
Today, we are announcing federal and state charges, all of which were charged or unsealed at some point over the past 2 weeks, the past 14 days. Coordinated nationwide action. Since June 8th, we've charged 455 defendants across 56, like I said a minute ago, U.S. attorney's offices, and 45 U.S. states and territories. As alleged in the various indictments, these individuals participated in healthcare fraud schemes involving over $6.5 billion in false claims submitted to Medicare, Medicaid, and other healthcare programs. The team around me will get into more specifics, but here are a few points that stand out. In one indictment, we're bringing charges against a corporate executive in Arizona in connection to over a $1 billion fraud involving unnecessary wound grafts. This alleged scheme costs Medicare over $1 million per patient. In total, our indictment charges 11 defendants for over $2 billion in fraudulent claims in connection to alleged wound care schemes. The indictment also alleges that these individuals then used the taxpayer money to bankroll multi-million-dollar homes, luxury vehicles like a $135,000 Maserati, jewelry like an $865,000 Bulgari necklace, and to top it all off, to fund the construction of a $4.6 million hotel at a beach resort in the Philippines. We're taking back the money, the luxury cars, the jewelry, and these alleged fraudsters will face justice. The coordinated actions of the past 2 weeks have resulted in over $182 million in cash and other assets seized, making clear our healthcare fraud enforcement efforts generate a significant return on investment for our taxpayers.
And that's very significant, but we got to keep our government in check as well. When even though he's saying all of this, most of the time we've seen throughout history that people are not held accountable and we don't get the money back. So we got to stay updated and see if we actually retain that information, get that money back to the taxpayers, because we either see two things. We don't never see the funds return to taxpayers, and we don't see these people do lengthy time. And so it's going to be quite interesting. I know that Trump has put Vice President J.D. Vance over this, and they have created a task force for fraud. But we'll see as this continues to expand, and we'll just keep it updated, man. But let's keep it going.
The FBI calls him the #2 guy in Minnesota's largest ever fraud scheme. This evening, he is behind bars thousands of miles away. Only WCCO's Jonah Kaplan talked to the team who tracked him down on another continent. And Jonah joins us right now. So he's been on the run for years.
Yeah, Amelia, if you go back to the original indictment for Feeding Our Future, there's Amy Bach, the convicted ringleader, and then this gentleman, Abdi Kerm-Idlay. He was last seen in Minnesota in November 2021. Abdi Kerm-Idlay had booked a round-trip ticket from Minneapolis to London and never came back. But here he is in custody in Mogadishu, Somalia, 4.5 years later.
This office has now been focusing intensively on fraud against the taxpayers of the United States and the taxpayers of Minnesota.
U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen and FBI Special Agent in Charge Christopher Dodson sat down with us for an exclusive interview about the joint operation with Somali intelligence.
It shows that the long arm of American law reaches all around the globe, that even in Somalia, you can't escape the FBI.
Was this something where you got a tip and all of a sudden he reappeared again?
Mr. Idlay was on our radar for some time. I can tell you that we had been tracking his whereabouts for a couple of weeks. And when the time was safe and opportune for law enforcement, they sprung to action to take him into custody.
This sounds pretty significant that the government of Somalia was actually working with the United States, the FBI.
We were hand in glove in this investigation from the start, and we owe a lot of gratitude to them for the success of this operation.
Along with Bach, Idlay allegedly recruited and bribed the businesses that submitted fake receipts and invoices to the Minnesota Department of Education in the Feeding Our Future scheme. Investigators also allege Idlay personally took in more than $5 million in cash and used some of it to buy a house in Burnsville, and also sent some of that to Uganda, China, and the UAE.
For other people of importance, but there was, after Amy Bach, nobody exceeded Mr. Idlay in importance in the Feeding Our Future scheme.
Bach was sentenced to more than 40 years in prison last month. She is appealing that sentence. Idlay, though, will have to be extradited to the United States before any trial can get underway here, and there's no timetable for that just yet.
As I said earlier, Nick Shirley, he uncovered all of this, and you can see that in Minnesota, Tim Walz, they did nothing. They did nothing. Yes, they may have a few people, but this guy should have never had the opportunity to leave the country and been gone this whole entire time. And now it takes the Trump administration to invoke a task force to specifically attack and find fraud and find fraudsters to actually make this happen. This should never happen under Tim Walz's watch. And to think that we were going to have him, he could have been our vice president. Just to think that he could have been our vice president. And now let's take this to what happened here actually in Houston. And these women had the opportunity to flee and go back to Vietnam after they had over $90 million Medicaid fraud. Let's review.
Good evening. Mia is off tonight. We are learning new details about a Houston woman accused of running a nearly $100 million healthcare fraud scheme. Emily Tai was just added to the FBI's most wanted fraudster list. Aniela Ruiz talking exclusively with the Houston FBI agent in charge about this case. She's live from the federal courthouse downtown. Aniela?
Well, Lynn, she was expected to appear here in federal court. Instead, they believe she fled the country. 41-year-old Emily Tai facing several federal charges for allegedly running a healthcare fraud scheme of more than $90 million. According to court documents, Tai allegedly ran a genetic testing lab out of this location here off of 610.
Her scheme was that she was fraudulently billing for tests, laboratory tests, specifically genetics tests that were not medically necessary.
Special agent in charge of the FBI in Houston, Jason Hudson, says the scheme involves several people.
Kickback scheme in which she had co-conspirators and she was paying them for their part in this fraudulent activity. A lot of these were legitimate doctor scripts.
They say the operations stretch far beyond Houston.
Her laboratory was here in the Houston area, but she was collecting DNA samples from people across the country.
Federal investigators say the alleged scheme took place from 2019 to 2022 when she was indicted and she was brought here to federal court. She made bond and was out with an ankle monitor, but she never made it back.
Cut her ankle monitor and she fled the country. We believe that she's currently in Vietnam.
Now the FBI has added Ty to its newly launched Most Wanted fraudster list and is offering a reward for information leading to her arrest. Investigators say crimes like these impact every taxpayer.
They should anger the taxpayers because, again, even though there may not be per se a traditional victim like there may be in a violent crime, the victim, once again, is us. It's the taxpayer.
Well, the FBI says this new fraudster list is designed to spotlight those people who have allegedly committed these major fraud crimes in our area. By the way, there is a $150,000 reward for any information that leads to her arrest. Reporting live in downtown Houston.
And the bottom line is, because I look at it like this, we have to broadcast this. We got to bring shame back. And in the same breath, like I've been stating in several other videos, our judicial system sucks. And we see it often happen all the time. These people don't even get lengthy sentences. They can post bail and pretty much leave the country. Now in my opinion, now you spending more tax dollars to go capture these people. I think that we need to revamp some of our judicial laws. We need to hold these judges accountable as well. These prosecutors, these judges, we need to hold everybody accountable, because at the end of the day, wrong is wrong, right is right, and they shouldn't be able to be released simply because they didn't commit a murder or anything like that, right? No. These people need to be held accountable, and it shouldn't take us to have to go travel across the world to seek out and find these individuals. And so I think that is one of the problems that we are facing as well when it comes down to fraud. You either getting them leniency with the crime. It's amazing that they can steal millions and millions and billions of dollars, but only getting a slap on the wrist when it come down to the time. In the same breath, our judicial system, these judges, the prosecution, whoever it may be, they're giving them leniency by giving them bail. I think it's crazy. I think it's ridiculous. And we got to get down to the bottom of this. But sippers, sippets, y'all let me know how y'all feel in the comments. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It's your boy Mercy.